People say every street has its rhythm. The quiet hum of sprinklers, the occasional car that passes like a heartbeat, the chatter of neighbors who pretend not to listen. I've always liked that sound. It tells you who belongs and who doesn't. My name is Evelyn Moore, and I live at number 42. Some call me a gossip. I prefer observer of suburban behavior. There's a difference, mostly in vocabulary and self-awareness. Our street isn't remarkable. It's the kind of place where every mailbox is painted, every garden trimmed just enough to make people feel superior to the house next door. But if you look closely, really closely, you start to notice the cracks, the half-closed curtains, the cars that leave too early and come back too quietly, the way someone always looks over their shoulder before closing the door. And last Wednesday morning, I noticed the biggest crack of all. Number 12. The curtains were gone. Now, if you've never paid attention to curtains, you've been living in the dark, literally and metaphorically. Curtains are the soul of a house. They tell stories. They whisper secrets. And when they disappear, it means something has gone terribly wrong. Mrs. Henderson, who lived there, was the type to have at least 3 layers: lace, blackout, and floral, so old-fashioned it practically smelled of secrets. That morning, there was nothing, just bare glass staring at me like a dare. I stood by my window, teacup in hand, and felt the kind of unease that only nosy people and detectives get. The sense that something is about to reveal itself, and you're the only one who noticed. Mrs. Henderson wasn't just a neighbor. She was an institution, head of the Homeowners Association, keeper of schedules, collector of grievances. She could host a charity bake sale and a public execution with the same energy. She had opinions on everyone's garbage placement, window colors, and moral compass. So imagine my shock when, after years of daily sightings, the pruning, the shouting, the orchestrated perfection, she simply vanished. At first, I thought perhaps she'd gone to visit her sister. But then I remembered she didn't have one. She'd told me that over dinner once, after 2 glasses of wine and a comment about people who can't keep their bloodlines clean. Subtlety was never her strength. 3 days passed. No Mrs. Henderson, no mail collected, no sound of her radio playing old jazz, just silence, and that cat, Princess, glaring through the window like she'd inherited all her owner's contempt. So, of course, I decided to investigate. Before you roll your eyes, let me clarify something. I don't meddle. I maintain order. It's a responsibility. When you've lived on the same street for over 20 years, someone has to keep track of reality. Otherwise, rumors become facts, and facts, when ignored, turn into crime scenes. I started with Walter Briggs, our handyman and unofficial locksmith. He's a man who smells of sawdust and questionable decisions. "Morning, Mrs. Moore," he said, hammer in hand. "Walter," I began, "you haven't seen Mrs. Henderson, have you?" He hesitated. That was my first clue. Men like Walter don't pause unless they're calculating how much of the truth they can afford. "She said she was going away for a few days," he finally muttered. "Told me not to tell anyone." I raised an eyebrow. "Anyone or me?" He blinked. "You, specifically." I smiled, politely, the way people do before deciding whether to ruin someone's life. That night I sat by the window again, lights off, notebook open. I've always believed note-taking is underrated in crime prevention. At precisely 9:07 p.m., a car arrived at number 12. Black sedan, tinted windows, too sleek for this neighborhood. A man stepped out, tall, expensive suit, a face you'd forget on purpose. He carried a box, went inside, and left 7 minutes later. Empty-handed. The lights never turned on. By morning, I saw Detective Ryan Collins parked on the curb, pretending to read a newspaper upside down. Subtlety, as I've said before, is a lost art. I brought him cookies, the universal key to information. "Detective," I said sweetly, "I assume this isn't about the garden club?" He looked up, guilty crumbs already forming on his collar. "Just routine follow-up, Mrs. Moore. Nothing to worry about. Routine follow-ups don't involve sedans and missing curtains, I replied. He sighed. Mrs. Henderson might have left town. Left town? I asked. Without her cat? Without announcing it to the entire neighborhood with banners and cake? He stared, then blinked. A rookie mistake. When men in authority blink before answering, it's because the truth isn't rehearsed. Maybe she needed a break, he muttered. From what? I asked. Her reputation? He didn't reply. The next day, I pretended to clean my porch just to observe the world from a different angle. You can learn a lot from pretending to work. People ignore you when you're holding a broom. And I was right to look busy, because something about number 12 was starting to change. The mail had stopped coming. The garbage bin had vanished. And that cat, Princess, was now sitting on my steps, judging me for feeding her the wrong brand of tuna. I knelt to pet her, and she hissed, not at me, but at something behind me. When I turned, I saw Emily Dawson, the new tenant from number 18, walking her dog. She's the kind of person who looks nervous even in her own shadow. I didn't know Mrs. Henderson left, she said softly. Neither did I replied. I heard something, Emily continued. The night before she vanished, I woke up around midnight. There was shouting, a crash, then silence. I nodded slowly. Did you recognize the voice? She hesitated. It sounded like Mr. Price. Now that was interesting. Daniel Price, the man from number 43. The kind of neighbor who smiles too easily, always polite, always perfect. The type who irons his shirts even on weekends. I'd never trusted people who didn't crumble under pressure. After Emily left, I wrote her story down in my notebook. Witness statements are essential, even when the witnesses are more scared than helpful. By the time the sun began to set, my notes had grown. Curtains gone, mail untouched, cat relocated, midnight shouting, black sedan, Daniel Price, raised voice. I underlined his name twice. At precisely 7:03 p.m., as if summoned by suspicion itself, Daniel appeared outside, watering plants that were already dead. The water pooled around the roots like guilt. I walked over. Lovely evening, I said. Evelyn, he smiled. You're out late. Curiosity keeps me young, I said. Tell me, Daniel, did you happen to see anything unusual at number 12 lately? He shrugged. Can't say I did. Been working late all week. A safe answer. Too safe. His kind always forget the small details, like the wax smudge on his shoe. Pale, gray, faintly scented, not romantic candle wax. The industrial kind people use to mask smells. Well, I said sweetly, if you remember anything, do let me know. I'd hate for anything unpleasant to linger in the neighborhood. He smiled that same perfect smile, the kind people use to end conversations before they start. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air outside felt thick as if holding its breath. So I did what any reasonable woman would do. I took my flashlight and went for a walk. I told myself it was for exercise. In truth, I wanted to see number 12 up close. The moonlight hit the windows just right, and for a split second, I thought I saw someone inside. A flicker of movement, like a shadow slipping past the kitchen. My heart raced, but curiosity has always been stronger than fear. I stepped closer. The side window was slightly open. I leaned in, careful not to make a sound. The house smelled strange, not decay, not dust, something clean, too clean. The kind of scent that covers rather than cleans. My flashlight beam landed on the kitchen counter. There it was, the blue teapot, cracked. If you knew Mrs. Henderson, you'd understand. That teapot was sacred. She called it Harold. He survived more heartbreak than I have, she once said. For Harold to be broken meant something had gone horribly, irrevocably wrong. A faint sound behind me. Gravel shifting. I turned, flashlight trembling slightly. Mrs. Moore. It was Detective Collins again, of course, because the universe has a cruel sense of humor. You shouldn't be here, he said. You shouldn't be late to an investigation, I replied. He sighed, clearly regretting every life choice that led him to this street. She's not dead, he said finally. She's under investigation. Financial crimes. Fraud, embezzlement. She disappeared before we could arrest her. Then she didn't vanish, I said. She planned this. He hesitated. It's complicated. Everything worth knowing is... I smiled. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mrs. Moore, please don't involve yourself. This isn't a game. Of course not, I said. Games have rules. He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he walked away. His flashlight beam disappeared down the street, leaving me alone with the silence and that cracked teapot staring at me through the glass. The next morning, moving trucks arrived. No sirens, no reporters, just gray uniforms and quick hands. They carried out boxes labeled with numbers instead of names. That's how you erase someone. Start with their labels. I watched from my window. One of the movers knelt, lifted a floorboard, and found an envelope. He handed it to Collins, who pocketed it immediately. No tagging, no notes, no witnesses. He looked up and caught me watching. I waved. He didn't. When they left, number 12 looked hollow. Houses have expressions, you know. This one looked embarrassed, like it had seen too much and wanted to forget. That evening, I poured myself tea I wouldn't drink and talked to Princess. Do you think she's alive? I asked. She blinked once, which I chose to interpret as yes. Do you think she'll come back? Another blink. Wouldn't that be interesting? The cat purred, as if she knew something I didn't. Later that night, I saw movement again. A flicker of light from inside the house. I leaned forward, heart racing, and then... nothing. Just the reflection of my own face, curious and unblinking. People say curiosity killed the cat. Maybe. But satisfaction resurrected it. And if you're still here, listening to me ramble, then clearly you're my kind of neighbor. The type who watches and wonders. Tell me in the comments what you think happened to Mrs. Henderson. I have theories, but I'd love to hear yours. Don't forget to like this video. It helps me keep the lights on and the curtains half open. Because trust me, in this neighborhood, it's safer to see than to be seen. The morning after the movers left, the street felt hollow, the kind of quiet that doesn't comfort. It lingers, like perfume left behind by someone who's already gone. Even the birds were cautious. They landed on the fence, looked at the house, and flew away again. Smart creatures. I made myself breakfast I didn't want, because pretending to eat helps people believe you're fine. Across the road, the for sale sign had appeared overnight. Veronica Hale was already there, of course, the self-appointed queen of sympathy. She leaned against her mailbox, perfectly dressed for tragedy, pretending to comfort Detective Collins while actually interrogating him. I watched them from my window, sipping cold tea. Veronica's lips moved like she was whispering condolences, but her eyes were scanning his pockets. She was the kind of woman who could smell guilt like perfume. The detective looked uncomfortable. A small victory, since he'd ignored my last 3 theories. When they were done talking, Veronica looked up, straight at me. She smiled, the kind of smile that says, I know something you don't, and I plan to use it. So I smiled back, because 2 can play that game, and I've been playing it longer. By afternoon, Walter Briggs was back on the street. He was replacing the locks at number 12, claiming it was standard procedure. I asked him who requested it. He said the authorities. I asked which ones. He said the important ones. That's Walter's way of saying none at all. I noticed something while he worked. A small box he carried into the house. Old, wooden, marked with paint that had faded into near invisibility. I asked what was inside. Just supplies, he said. Then he closed the door behind him. He stayed in there for nearly an hour. When he came out, his hands were shaking. I asked if he was all right. He mumbled something about dust. There's no dust in a house that's been scrubbed clean. That evening, I went for my walk. The one I take every night, same path, same time. It helps me think, or at least look like I'm thinking. I passed the house, the light from the porch flickering, on, off, on. I stopped. The flicker wasn't random. 3 blinks, pause, 3 again, a pattern. A signal, I know Morse code. Don't ask why. I married a man in the Navy once. According to the pattern, it spelled SOS. I stared at the light, heart pounding. Was someone inside? Was this some kind of sick joke? I wanted to move closer, but a voice in my head whispered, "Not yet." I've learned that timing is everything in both murder and conversation. I went home and wrote everything down, the locks, the box, the light. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The next day, Detective Collins came by. "Mrs. Moore," he said, looking like a man who hadn't slept. "I'd appreciate it if you stopped monitoring police activity." I smiled. "Monitoring? I'm observing. There's a difference." He looked around, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, there's more to this. Her financial crimes weren't the only issue. She was blackmailing people, important ones. Someone wanted her gone. And what do you think?" I asked. "I think she made enemies." "Well, Detective," I said, "if that's true, you might want to look closer to home." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Only that you're the one who took the envelope." He froze. "How did you—" "I watch things, remember?" He straightened his coat. "Stay out of this, Mrs. Moore." "Of course," I said sweetly. "I always do." When he left, I checked the light again that night. It didn't flicker, not once. Whatever message there was, it had stopped. But 2 days later, something new appeared. A letter, no stamp, no sender, slipped under my door. The handwriting was elegant, sharp, deliberate. It read, "You're looking in the wrong direction, Evelyn. Some houses hide what others bury." I held the note under the lamp, tracing the edges. It smelled faintly of lavender and lemon polish. And I realized something chilling. That was Mrs. Henderson's scent. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair, watching the empty house across the street, waiting for movement. At 3 a.m, I saw it. A silhouette at the window. Tall, still, watching me. By the time I turned on the porch light, it was gone. The next morning, Walter avoided my gaze. Veronica pretended not to notice me. Daniel Price smiled too much, and Emily, poor thing, looked like she hadn't slept either. The whole street was pretending nothing had happened. That's the thing about suburbia. Denial is its favorite hobby. Days passed. Weeks even. Life went back to its delicate choreography of normalcy. But I knew better. The silence around number 12 wasn't peace. It was waiting. Then one evening, as I walked past, I saw something that made my stomach twist. The for sale sign was gone. The house lights were on again. Curtains, new ones, hung in the windows. And in the driveway, a familiar black sedan. Someone had moved in. I stood there for a moment, clutching my coat tighter. The front door opened slightly, and a woman's voice called out, "Lovely evening, isn't it?" I froze. That voice, calm, confident, familiar. When she stepped into the porch light, my heart skipped. The haircut was different, the color darker, but the smile, oh, I'd know that smile anywhere. It was Mrs. Henderson. "Mrs. Henderson," I whispered. She smiled wider. "I prefer Helen now." And then she closed the door. I stood there for a long time, staring at that house. Every light inside turned off, one by one, until only the porch light remained. It flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. People say houses forget. They don't. They just wait for the right moment to remember. Now, my dear listener, if you've been watching as closely as I have, tell me, what do you think? Did she fake her disappearance to escape her enemies, or to become one of them? Write your theory in the comments below. I do read them, you know. I like to know who's paying attention. And if you enjoy stories like this, secrets that breathe and neighbors who don't sleep, then like this video, subscribe to The Neighbor from 42, and keep those curtains half open, because the next mystery might be staring right back at you. As for me, I'll keep watching. After all, it's what I do best. I watch, I notice, and I remember. Good night, dear neighbors. And remember, curiosity didn't kill the cat. It just moved it to a better neighborhood.